Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. Today, we're going to look into something a little different, something you might not expect to see in your skincare routine.
Oh, really? What's that?
Beef tallow.
Beef tallow.
Yeah, you heard right. We're talking rendered beef fat.
Huh, interesting.
And you know what? It's actually having a major moment right now, like a real resurgence. People are saying it does amazing things for your skin.
A comeback for a classic ingredient then.
Exactly. And we've got a ton of sources to dig into today to understand this whole beef tallow thing. We've got articles from Spavelous, Prevention, Everyday Health, The Good Trade, Toops & Co., Sentient Media, National Geographic, and even Get Darlin. So, yeah, we've got a lot to cover.
Wow, you weren't kidding when you said a ton of sources.
Nope, we're going deep. And our mission today is to figure out what's behind all this hype. Does beef tallow really deserve a spot in our skincare routines? We're going to explore its history, the science behind it, and, any potential downsides. And we'll also look at some modern alternatives that are out there. It's worth noting, though, that even the experts don't all agree on how effective beef tallow really is. So I guess we'll see what we find out.
Sounds like a plan. Where do we start?
Let's go way back to the history of tallow in skincare. I mean, it's pretty wild to think about, way before all the fancy serums and creams we have now, people were using what they could find, and tallow was a big part of that. It wasn't just some passing fad either. We're talking centuries of use, long before modern cosmetics were even a thing.
That's right. I mean, for generations, tallow was the go-to for making soap and creating all sorts of skincare treatments. When plant oils or synthetic ingredients weren't available, people turned to animal fats like tallow. It was essential.
And it wasn't just in one place either. The Spavelous article mentioned that even ancient Egyptians back in the Bronze Age were mixing tallow with herbs and essential oils to make creams. Can you imagine? They used these tallow creams to keep their skin soft and healthy, even in that super dry desert climate.
That speaks volumes about tallow's moisturizing power, right? And the Greeks and Romans were on board too. They used animal fats like tallow for their healing balms and salves, trying to achieve that radiant look that's still so coveted today. And of course, as you mentioned, it was a key ingredient in making soap back then too. So yeah, it's got a long and rich history.
Wow, so it's got a serious past. But what's the science behind it all? Why do people think beef tallow is actually good for your skin? Let's dig into that.
Okay, so here's where things get really interesting. The articles point out that one of the main reasons tallow works so well is because its fatty acid profile is strikingly similar to that of our own skin. And this similarity is crucial because it affects how well our skin absorbs it. This similarity, especially the presence of fatty acids like palmitic and stearic acid in proportions similar to our sebum, means it integrates beautifully with our skin's natural barrier. Could even be better at barrier repair than oils with mainly unsaturated fats.
Okay, so it's like this natural compatibility thing.
Exactly.
Cool. So what are the specific ingredients in tallow that do all the good stuff?
Well, oleic acid is a major one. It helps the tallow sink deep into your skin, delivering all those nutrients where they're needed. And then there's vitamin A, which helps with cell turnover and can even reduce the look of fine lines. And then you've got vitamin D, which is important for your skin's immune response and that barrier function we were talking about. Oh, and we can't forget vitamin K. That helps reduce inflammation and keep your skin nice and elastic.
So it's not just fat, it's like a whole package of good stuff. And the sources mention tallow being a natural emollient. What does that even mean for our skin?
Well, think of it this way. An emollient softens and smooths your skin by filling in those microscopic gaps and cracks in the outer layer. So you get a smoother surface, your skin holds on to moisture better, and you avoid that dry, flaky look.
Gotcha. So who benefits the most from using beef tallow on their skin? Is it good for everyone?
The general consensus seems to be that if you have dry or sensitive skin, you're likely to see the biggest difference. Tallow's richness is great for these skin types. It helps smooth things out, protects against environmental damage, locks in that moisture, and really strengthens your skin's natural barrier.
Sounds like a dream for anyone struggling with dryness or irritation. But what about people who are prone to breakouts? Is it good for them too?
That's where you have to be a bit more careful. Because it is so rich, there is that chance it could clog pores, which could actually make acne worse if you're already prone to it. So if you're breakout prone, maybe use tallow sparingly or look for products that are specifically designed to be less likely to clog pores.
Right, so it's not a one-size-fits-all solution then. Makes sense. So there are all sorts of skincare products that contain tallow now. What are some of the main types you see out there?
It's pretty diverse, actually, considering its traditional roots. Tallow balms and moisturizers are probably the most common. They tend to have a lot of tallow in them, sometimes blended with other natural oils or botanical extracts to boost their effects. And they're known for being super rich and hydrating.
Makes sense. And I've seen a lot about tallow soaps too. Feels very old school, in a good way.
Yeah, definitely. The yellow makes for a hard, long-lasting soap that lathers up really well. It's making a comeback with people who appreciate that traditional handmade quality. And then there are tallow lip balms. They're amazing for nourishing and softening your lips, giving them deep moisture and protection.
My lips could definitely use some of that. What other tallow products are there?
Well, there are body butters too. They're similar to balms, but sometimes whipped, so they're lighter and easier to spread. They're great for large areas of dry skin. And some brands are even making cleansing balms with tallow, so you get a gentle cleanse and a boost of moisture at the same time. Pretty innovative.
A tallow cleansing balm. That's really interesting. And you mentioned tallow sunscreens, although you said those are less common. I guess it makes sense, though, tallow could help create a protective barrier.
Exactly. They're not mainstream yet, but some niche brands are starting to use tallow in their natural sunscreen formulations, taking advantage of those nourishing properties.
Cool. Now, for anyone out there who's thinking about trying tallow skincare, the Spavelous article highlighted some of the top-rated brands. What makes these particular brands stand out from the rest?
Well, a few things seem to matter a lot in the tallow skincare world. Positive customer reviews are obviously huge, and the quality of the ingredients, especially whether the tallow is grass-fed and finished, really matters. And of course, the brand's overall reputation and how popular it is in the market plays a role too.
So, who are some of the big names in tallow skincare?
Vintage Tradition is one that gets a lot of praise. They're often seen as the gold standard. They're all about high-quality, grass-fed tallow, using those traditional rendering methods, and keeping their formulations simple and effective. Then there's Hearth & Bee Homestead. They get great reviews too, and they have a wider range of products. They focus on organic ingredients and often add things like essential oils and botanicals, but they still keep the tallow content high. So you get that purity, but with some extra benefits.
So, a mix of straightforward and more enhanced options. What other brands are worth checking out?
Let's see, there's Primally Pure. They're known for their tallow balms, but they've got a whole line of natural skincare products. And they're really good at choosing essential oil blends that address specific skin needs and preferences. So you get the tallow goodness plus aromatherapy benefits. Summer Solstice Tallow is another one. They're all about local sourcing and regenerative agriculture. They have a slow-made process, and they're really committed to ethical and sustainable practices. Their whipped balms are super popular. Oh, and there's Fatco. They specialize in grass-fed tallow skincare. They really emphasize those traditional uses in skin benefits, and they're a clean brand, which means no synthetics, parabens, or artificial fragrances. Vintage Tradition, often seen as the gold standard, likely earns this reputation by strictly adhering to traditional rendering methods that preserve the beneficial components we discussed, while using high-quality grass-fed tallow known for its richer nutrient profile.
Wow, so many good choices. But let's shift gears a bit and talk about the potential downsides. Are there any real risks to using beef tallow on your skin?
It's definitely smart to be aware of the potential issues. The articles point out that if tallow isn't processed or stored properly, it could potentially harbor harmful microorganisms, and that could lead to skin irritation or even an infection. And unlike those store-bought skincare products that are loaded with preservatives, tallow can go bad over time if it's not stored the right way.
So quality and proper handling are super important.
Absolutely. The sources really emphasize that you should only buy tallow from reputable companies that follow professional preparation and preservation practices. That way you know you're getting a safe and high-quality product. And we touched on this earlier, but it's worth mentioning again, the conflicting information about whether beef tallow clogs pores. Some sources say it won't, but others suggest it might, especially if you have oily or acne-prone skin.
Sounds like it can vary from person to person. Now, for those who like the idea of using tallow but aren't into animal products, are there any good plant-based alternatives that have those same moisturizing qualities?
Oh, absolutely. There are some excellent plant-based oils that can do the trick. Jojoba oil, argan oil, and coconut oil are all known for their moisturizing power.
And what are some of the advantages of going with these plant-based options?
Well, for some people, just the fact that they come from plants is a big plus, and they generally have a lower risk of clogging pores compared to tallow, although that can depend on the specific oil and your individual skin type.
Okay, so lots of options to choose from. Taking everything into account, what are your thoughts on where beef tallow fits into the world of skincare today?
You know, it's fascinating to see this traditional ingredient making such a strong comeback. It really shows how we're combining ancient practices with our modern understanding of skin health. There are definitely important things to think about, like sourcing and potential reactions for them people, but for many, the moisturizing benefits are undeniable. I think as research continues, we'll see even more refined ways to use tallow that maximize its benefits while minimizing any downsides.
I think that makes a lot of sense, and I love that the Spavelous article ends with a whole Q&A section. It covers some of the most common questions people have about using beef tallow. Let's hit some of the highlights for our listeners.
Great idea. One of the first questions is, what exactly is beef tallow? And as we've discussed, it's rendered fat from cattle, it's full of nutrients, and has been used for centuries for its moisturizing and healing properties. Another big question is it good for all skin types? And generally, the answer is yes. It works for dry, oily, sensitive, and combination skin because its makeup is so similar to our skin's own natural oils.
Glad to hear it's not just for one skin type. What about the whole greasiness factor? A lot of people probably wonder about that.
Yeah, the Q&A tackles that head on. It explains that even though it uses a fat, beef tallow absorbs pretty quickly and doesn't leave that heavy, greasy feeling. It can even help balance your skin's oil production. And people often wonder if they could use it on their face, and the answer is yes. It's gentle enough for that and can be really great for dryness and sensitivity, even as an overnight treatment.
Sounds pretty versatile. What about allergies?
Beef tallow is generally considered hypoallergenic, which makes it a good option for people with sensitive skin or allergies. But as with any new skincare product, it's always a good idea to do a patch test first, just to be safe. They also address how often to use it, suggesting once or twice a day, depending on how dry your skin is.
Makes sense. And what about people with eczema or psoriasis? Can beef tallow help with those conditions?
A lot of people with those conditions have said that tallow does provide relief. The anti-inflammatory properties and all those nutrients help soothe irritated skin and promote healing. So it's definitely worth a try for them.
That's good to know. And what about the smell? Does beef tallow have a strong scent?
Good question. High-quality pure tallow usually has a very faint, neutral scent that disappears quickly after you apply it. And of course, you can find scented and unscented tallow products too. The Q&A also mentions that it's safe to use on your lips for extra moisture and even around your eyes.
So it's a real multitasker, but what about the ethical and sustainability side of things?
Well, using beef tallow can definitely be ethical and sustainable, especially if it's sourced from farms that are practicing responsible agriculture. It's basically using a byproduct of the meat industry that might otherwise go to waste. The Q&A also explains how rendering works. It's a slow heating and straining process that removes impurities, and it compares tallow from grass-fed cows to that from conventionally raised cows. Grass-fed tallow generally has a richer profile of beneficial stuff like omega-3s and certain vitamins.
We talked about that debate over whether tallow clogs pores earlier, and it seems like the Q&A acknowledges that too.
Yeah, they say there's no clear consensus, with some folks claiming it doesn't clog pores and others saying it might for some people, especially those with oily or acne-prone skin. And finally, they touch on possible side effects. It seems the main risks are acne for those who are already prone to it, and contamination if the tallow isn't stored properly.
Well, that's a pretty thorough overview of the important questions and things to consider. So to wrap things up, it sounds like beef tallow has a long history and offers some real benefits for the skin, especially for those with dry skin. And its unique composition seems to be a key factor, but it's also important to think about where it comes from, how it's processed, and whether it might clog pores, especially for certain skin types.
I think you nailed it. It just goes to show that even when we're talking about a traditional ingredient, understanding the details and making informed choices for your own skin is really crucial.
Exactly. So here's something to ponder as we wrap up. Given what we've learned today, how might you look at those traditional skincare ingredients in a new light? Are there other time-tested remedies out there that might be worth exploring? Maybe by balancing those historical practices with what we know now from science, we can discover some hidden gems. Ultimately, it's all about figuring out what works best for your skin and your values. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of beef tallow.